right here in Australia. GIS is the largest provider of sports degrees in the UK, with campuses at Wembley and Etihad Stadium. Learn online with unique access to the iconic MCG and a big-hitting Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Welcome back. Happy New Year. A belated Merry Christmas if I missed out anybody. George Danikian and Pokuah Frimpong, my co-host, who has also been very, very busy. I've been relaxed and chilled and quite amazed with all the football's been going on around the world. Did I mention, Pokuah, that the EPL is back? Did I mention the FA Cup is back? The League Cup is back? Upsets galore everywhere. The A-League is back. The A-League Women's is back. And there have been some results that I need for you, because of your background and your insight, to explain how it is that one of the teams that has basically not been able to manage a win has gone over and knocked over one of the tournament favourites in Melbourne City W League side. What's going on? But before we go any further, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, George. And I don't know how to describe what I saw in that 2-0 victory from Western City Wanderers against City. But
can I just say I'm in shock?
Yeah, no, I was also in
shock. No, you'll need to use a prod to get me to, blink again. I don't know how it happens.
No, I don't know how it happened, because Western City Wanderers haven't won a game in 364
Don't make it harder. Yeah. Don't make it worse.
So it was...
Do you think Dario Vidicic is sort of going back and watching the game and thinking, it didn't happen? Not on my watch. No. Maybe I should have given this to my father, who's now looking after the men's side. Oh, and by the way, for all those Melbourne City people who keep telling me that there's a young guy, the coach of Melbourne City, and his name is PK. It's not. PK is now coaching Troyes in Europe, and it's one of the city clubs that the City Football Group own. And the new coach of the Melbourne City men's side is Rado Vidicic. Oh, now I'm confused. Rado Vidicic, and of course his son Dario, who used to play for Adelaide, played for Melbourne City, is now the coach and doing a damn fine job, except for this result. So I'm wondering, do you think he's going to throw that video coverage of that particular game away?
I think that game doesn't exist for the team anymore. It's a tricky one because I don't think anybody would have told you that I thought, well, Western Sydney Wanderers are going to get a win, let alone a result.
But they did.
And it's an important win for them. Hopefully they can kick on from that, because scoring goals has been a really big issue. They've been in a lot of low-scoring contests, except for the game against Newcastle.
And they can't seem to score.
And it's not been not just a this season problem, it's been multiple seasons where almost the club culture has become...
Don't say that. It's ingrained.
It's almost ingrained in them.
We don't discover strikers.
Yeah, but it's almost a system where it comes from the next group. It's like, oh, we haven't scored yet. We're still not scoring, and it kind of seeps into the next crop of players that come into it.
And you're seeing them all, because we should add Pokuah Frimpong as part of the Paramount Plus team calling the game, the A-League Women's. How are you finding it?
It's been
calling the game. It's a bit different to what you imagined when you were doing the game at NPL level.
No, it's different, but I've enjoyed it. I have.
But it's good, but different.
Good, yeah, it's good, but different, and learning a lot.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
And been calling with some great people as well. So
we should also explain to those that don't understand how you guys do it. It's changed tremendously. The costs of the game are so vast, and the telecasters now have all learnt from one another, watching others, how they cover the games, and they're in some matches, you're not live. You're there with the aid of technology, and yet you're calling it off the screen effectively, like we used to do in the dark days when they actually had not digital but VHS tapes that they'd send us from Europe or South America, and we'd put them into the machine. We'd step into the studio and start calling the game as if it was happening live. Graham Kennedy, someone I used to work with years ago, used to say, "We're now going live to the videotape." And I used to look at him and go, "Graham, it's being recorded." And he'd say to me, No, it's live to the videotape." So we used to have this constant back and forth. So how are you finding this, nudge, this sort of subtle shift, which is part of the territory? Everybody's doing it. Seven did it for a lot of the stuff. Channel 9 does it with its tennis. And we're talking about huge vasts of money that they're spending for sport. How are you finding it with Paramount Plus?
It's been a different experience, but...
great learning experience.
Yeah, great learning experience. And
good people.
Yeah, great people there, and I've really, really enjoyed it. It's not... it's different because you've got to go about it a different way, but I think you have to learn on the spot, and it's a really great learning opportunity.
But I was going to say, it's going to hold you in such good stead, later in the season. And of course, when you do those games live, we'll be able to tell that you're sort of levitating, because it'll be in your voice. It'll be a little... For those of us who will listen, religiously, we'll go, yep, now she's there. She's there. We can tell now. We can tell. And that's great. Well, I wish you every success. Yeah. It's just a fabulous thing going on. So, A-League Women's, some tremendous games being played. We've seen, as you said, some results. What have you made of some of the fallout from the A-League Men's with the Melbourne Derby, which was played quite a number of weeks ago now? Still bringing headlines, still bringing some announcements. And only a few days ago, we heard from Football Australia, and I believe also the APLs, they're now basically on the same page. Victory has been hit with some record penalties. Some are saying not enough, others saying way too heavy. What's your take? Because you're a football fan first, you're a professional as well. It means a lot to you, yeah?
Yeah.
Because you know a lot of people who love the club and mean to do the best.
I thought the points deduction was interesting because I thought they were going to get the automatic points
So
deduction.
the point deduction, we should explain, is suspended.
Yeah, it's suspended.
Should anyone break the rules between now and for the next 3 years, those points go.
Which is a long period of time.
Huge.
But it's
people have a short memory.
It is. It's interesting. I believe it's only. It only relates to A-League men's competitions, which doesn't relate to the MPL or A-League women's, which is, I think, helps the club out significantly by restricting it to A-League men's because you have more control in A-League men's, which obviously they.
I still wouldn't have thought. You've seen an awful lot of MPL games, and you've seen a lot of A-League women's games. You wouldn't have seen an atmosphere resembling what happened and some of the antics that unfolded on that particular night at Amy.
The antics that unfolded at Amy are at a completely different level. Yeah. So, there's been things incidents that have occurred between Victory supporters and Preston supporters and in the MPL and things like that.
But that's to and fro. That's sort of barking at one another, isn't it? But
it's changed dynamics of games where different protocols have had to be in place because of past interactions. And I think 450. I believe it's 450. I've seen 550,000. I'm not quite sure what the exact figure is. But I understand that that's a big thing for an A-League.
Oh, it's a whopping a big amount of money.
Incredibly, it'd be significant.
Yeah, it's an onerous number for any club.
I think it's important that I think James Johnson he said whoever wins the competition or if the people lose, the integrity of where the game goes from in terms of points to automatically giving a 3-0 win to City or it's important that we finish the game, which I understand. It'd be interesting to see how the players react.
I was going to say we actually start the game at the moment it was cancelled. Or postponed. Interesting. One side goes in knowing it's 1-0 down. The other side knows it goes into the game 1-0 up.
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
I want to see what the players' mentality will be like because
no active supporters at the ground.
No active supporters of the ground, but it's also what mentality, because you're playing a shorter game.
Correct.
Playing a shorter game, so you kind of get to be more.
We've basically got an hour left, haven't we?
Got an hour
or
left,
thereabouts.
and we still got to go to half time. So you can play 20 minutes of half.
So there'll be plenty of this going on, plenty of jawing.
And I think it will be. It'd be a fun contest, though. I think victory.
You think?
Yeah,
you think? Oh,
contest.
look. Speaking of fun contests, some fantastic news has emerged from Football Australia. A lot of people getting very excited now because we're into 2023, and the Women's World Cup that will be held in Australia later this year and in New Zealand is getting awfully close, and we need to see if our club and our players can come together again and start generating some of those fantastic performances we saw just before the new year. And I noticed that Football Australia, with the support of the New South Wales government, through that much maligned, Destination New South Wales arm, has gone to the party and has said, listen, we're going to host a 4-nation tournament comprising of 3 double headers, and the match days will be held in Gosford, in Sydney, and
Newcastle.
And guess who's going to play? The Matildas. Who plays the Matildas? Spain.
Got Jamaica.
No, Spain.
Spain, yep.
That should be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be great.
The Jamaicans have this other quality. They can match us physically, can't they?
Yeah, they've got some really great players who play in some of the biggest competitions in the world, and one of their star strikers, Bunny, she plays for Manchester City, and she's a great striker, so it'll be really interesting.
So she knows Mary Fowler.
Yeah, she does.
So there'll be no secrets there.
No, there'll be no secrets there.
And the other team is Czechia, which is the Czech Republic. So four teams playing in 3 double headers. Very exciting for the football fans. And what do you make of it? Who are you looking forward to seeing?
I'm looking to see.
Looking forward to.
It's interesting to see play Spain, because the Spain national team has been through a lot, and we've had a lot of players who you would think would be in that squad and no longer playing for the national team at the moment.
Yep.
But I am really looking forward to see how well we match up against Spain, because if we are going to want to win the World Cup, we have to beat teams like Spain, and I also want to see how we play against a team like Jamaica, who are really physical and can beat us on the counter, and how well
they're quick.
Yeah, how they're really incredibly quick, but they are also an incredibly skilled team.
Yep.
To see how our defensive shape matches up with them, I want to see how our defensive foundation, because I don't think I have a biggest issue with them, the Matildas, going forward as I do defensively.
Yeah,
so
I'm with you.
Seeing them, how they match up in different game styles defensively is really how I want to take
Speaking of defences, have you seen any young goalkeepers who've made an impression that might force their way into the Matildas side?
I don't know.
Because goalkeeping is one of those, when you have a good one, it's special.
Yeah, it's interesting.
When you're having problems, or you're starting to leak 1 or 2 goals, you start looking over your shoulder in a way that you never imagined.
It's interesting because we've got
2 or 3 that are pretty good.
Like Mackenzie Arnold is a good goalkeeper. She's she does her job well. I think Tegan Micah is the goalkeeper choice as the current stage for the Matildas side.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say the player's particularly young in terms of how long they've been around football, because they've been around for a long time. But Casey Dumont has been comfortably, I think, the best goalkeeper in the A-League Women's, and she's had a phenomenal last year, and she's been great for Melbourne.
Is she likely to get some experience?
I don't think there would be a call-up for her in the Matilda squad, because I think there is a kind of a lock on that at the moment. It's hard.
Do you like the idea of players having a lock on positions?
No, I'm not particularly a fan of that. I think I like more.
You got to earn it,
but also
got to be in form, haven't you?
Yeah, but also like players like Jada Wyman, Mackenzie Arnold, and Lydia Williams. They kind of haven't done enough wrong to be not in the squad.
Gotcha.
And you can't just kind of add Casey Dumont to add Casey Dumont. You've got to take one of them out. And Jada Wyman has played in the side with the best defensive record in the A-League Women's.
And she's coming off some long-term injuries Is she back fit?
Jada Wayman's been good. She's currently out because I think she's injured. I can't remember what injury she had, but she's injured at the moment.
Yep.
So that's why she didn't play for the last 2 games, I believe.
Right.
But we've got some options, and it's good though. We've got some good goalkeepers available, but we don't have as many in other areas. But it's good to have competition. I like.
Speaking of competition, we've got a fantastic opportunity now to catch up with someone who I've been meaning to talk to for weeks now. But of course, Christmas, New Year, things had to get out of the way. But we can catch up with her now. Her name is Bonita Mersiades, and she's a big part of the football scene, especially when it comes to women in the game. And also, she's played a tremendous role over the years with women in football. She's also had a tremendous role with producing and creating some wonderful events for the writers, the football writers in this country, and many from abroad. And over the last number of years, I'm wondering how many years now, would it be a decade? Bonita has managed to put together a fabulous week or weekend of football writers' panels and forums. And she joins us on, once again, State of Our Football Nation on FNR. And Bonita, welcome.
Thank you, George. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and your family. Pokuah and I, once we got the pleasantries over, we very quickly did a summation of what's happened over the last few weeks and some of the fallout that we saw during the infamous Melbourne derby. We've seen now both the APL and we've also seen Football Australia come out and make a number of judgments, and they've announced now a series of penalties. What have you made of some of the fallout? And could you believe that there was a dark day that we were going to see, especially with a Women's World Cup just around the corner and a fabulous World Cup in Qatar just ending with what must have been, in my mind, the greatest final I've seen?
Gosh, George, there's so many things wrapped up.
I know, but it's been like that, and we've been off air, and I just thought.
There's so much to talk
if anyone knows, because you lapped this up, you have actually been a part of this game for a lifetime. Through your family and through your other commitments and connections, and of course, you were part of the football teams, the Australian men's team. You were a big part of not only the games they played, how they turned out. You were also part of that team that tried very hard to bring a World Cup, a men's World Cup to Australia, and that didn't go quite to plan, did it?
No, but getting back to your earlier question and starting with the last things first, and that is, you mentioned that it's the best final you've seen in your lifetime.
Yep.
And I think that's right. I think almost everyone has had that comment to make about the quality of that particular game. Spoiled by a couple of things at the end in the presentation, but we won't go into that now.
Yep.
But getting back to the A-League, which is also part of what you asked about, I think, there is no excuse and there's no room for the loutish behaviour that we saw. And I'm glad that the A-League, or rather Football Australia, has come down quite heavily on those individuals, and so has the police been pursuing them. And I'm pleased that they've also had some sanctions, although not so tough, but really some sanctions against Melbourne Victory as well. But I wrote an op-ed. I was asked to write an op-ed by the Nine Media, ex-Fairfax, about this. And the point I made there is, while no one excuses that behaviour, there are other people who need to look at what are some of the factors that led to that happening. It doesn't excuse the behaviour, but let's be, the whole social media world erupted with disbelief, anger, dismay, you name it, when that decision regarding the Sydney Grand Finals was announced. And I think there are a few issues. If you could unpack that into a few issues. One, I think the whole communication around it could have been better.
Yeah, the messaging, 100% right. Yep.
They didn't socialise anyone to the fact that they were even pursuing that idea. And
Correct.
I think if that had been sort of talked about, people might have been better prepared. I think just in terms of the way they managed it, for example, why wouldn't you go to the other state governments and say, look, we've had this offer from New South Wales, are you interested? Or why wouldn't you package up 6 years or 8 years of A-League grand finals and say, we'll move around the states? That might have been something that people would see as fairer rather than what we ended up with. And I think there was this surprise that so many fans of Sydney FC, Western Sydney Wanderers, Newcastle, Central Coast, Macarthur were also up in arms about this decision, because all of us as football fans have an implicit sense of fairness about how the A-League grand final, and before that the NSL grand final, has been run. It's been based on merit, not based on which state government provided some money.
Correct. It's been the difference maker. There's no doubt about that. And we've been benefiting from some fantastic grand finals. I remember the one in Adelaide at the new Adelaide, redeveloped Adelaide Oval. It was a spectacular grand final. It looked tremendous on screen, and it showcased a part of the country and a stadium rather that people hadn't got too much access to. So in many respects, it was a terrific move. And again, we went to Perth. I agree with you, but I'm just wondering, this coziness with Football Australia and the APL and Sydney and the New South Wales government, and the fact that the New South Wales government has some brand new stadia that it needs to fill to pay their way, do you think all of this might have been way too much?
I think Football Australia has always had to deal with the perception, and I won't, question whether that's real or imagined, but the perception that it is close to the Sydney teams. In a sense, that's almost going to happen wherever Football Australia is located. There's going to be a perception that they're closer to the teams in which their city is based. I worked there for over a decade ago now, but there was that perception then, and even to the point I was told that I wasn't allowed to be a member of Sydney FC, even though I had been a foundation member of Sydney FC, and I'd actually lived in Canberra at the time. And that was how they tried to deal with the perception that there was no favouritism. I never saw that in the decision making. The decisions were based on commercial issues, as was this decision. From an A-League perspective, I can totally understand that they felt the need to lock in some financial certainty regarding to help the A-League currently, because they have been through 2 or 3 years of COVID.
Correct. Yep.
And then also some financial certainty around the A-League grand final. But as I mentioned earlier, they did not try to socialise that decision. They did not try to go out to the market to look at the competition for it. And they could have been a little bit smarter about how they packaged it all.
But that then saw this wave of fomenting criticism in social media that really got out of hand, that really did get out of hand. And I thought at the time, this Melbourne derby is going to have some real fire to it. I didn't realise it would quite, see what we actually turned out to watch at Amy Park. I never imagined. I thought the days of running onto pitches, and I never imagined someone. I think the last time I was actually really disappointed by the people's actions or fans' actions when young Tony Pisano was being chased by a fan with a corner post, and that was an awful long time ago. It was.
Yes,
was it Sydney,
in the 80s, I think.
Sydney City, Sydney Olympic? That's how long ago it was, and I never imagined I would see someone pick up a metal tin or a metal can filled with sand that they used to put the flares out, and use it as a weapon against both a player, in this instance the goalkeeper Tom Glover, and the referee, who I thought handled it. He handled it as well as anybody could. I thought he was really brave. I saw that he motioned for the players to come forward. I spoke to Chris Banbridge, who said to us the first thing that the referee should have done was pull everyone into the middle and then say to them, anything happens, we're all off. But again, easier thing to say in hindsight, much more difficult if you're in the heat of the moment and things, volcanic things are happening around you.
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone imagined that would be the reaction of what is fundamentally a relatively minor proportion of Melbourne Victory fans, a very minor proportion of Melbourne Victory fans, and an even smaller group of fans of the A-League in total. And I think everyone was shocked. And, as I said at the outset, any action taken by Football Australia and the authorities to deal with those individuals can only be supported.
Absolutely. Now, let's move on. Let's talk. It's 2023, Bonita, which means that the Women's World Cup that will be held in Australia and New Zealand is very, very close. And Pokuah Frimpong, who's my co-host, is beaming from ear to ear. She can't think of anything more exciting other than calling the games, which she's doing, of course, for Paramount Plus. The next most wonderful thing for her is to see women playing and being enormously competitive. And there are some competitive games coming up. And more importantly than that, there's an opportunity for some of our women to make a play at breaking into the Matildas. Do you think that's a possibility, Bonita? You've seen some of the players.
Look, I think there is from what we've seen so far in the A-League women's season. And I'm sure that's what Tony Gustafsson has been driving for the entire time. I mean, one of the criticisms of him is that, and his management is that he has played. He's had a lot of different people in the squad without necessarily playing them, but I'm sure he's looking at them closely and what they're doing at the moment. And there's no doubt that the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand will be a fantastic event. We are very good at hosting major sporting events. We've got a track record in that, and this will be no different. I don't think some other parts of the community realise quite how big this will be, because it's a 32-team World Cup over the two countries, admittedly, and they have, particularly some of those teams have a very big supporter base who will travel to Australia. And I know from the Football Writers Festival, which we're holding the weekend before the World Cup kicks off, it's very difficult to get accommodation. It's very difficult to get flights that are any sort of half decent price.
Well, you'd be a tremendous. You're a tremendous barometer then of what's about to come.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's great news for Australia overall as well. Let's not forget, as with the rest of the world, our tourism industry has suffered for the past 3 years.
Very much so.
And it's fantastic that football is able to help bring people from around the world to our country, and the light of the sporting world will be on our country and New Zealand for the 5 weeks. That's exactly what governments want out of the money they put in to host these events. And that's what it will deliver. Talk
to me about the Football Writers, the event that you've got coming up before the actual World Cup.
Yeah, we're holding it on the 15th to the 17th of July in Sydney. I daren't say the word Sydney, but the reason for that is it's the weekend before the first game that the Matildas are playing kicks off. It's against Ireland.
Wow. And
we haven't announced the lineup yet. It's all coming together. We did announce earlier this week that we've got two charity partners who are both do things very dear to a lot of the values of a lot of football fans. One is the Literacy for Life Foundation, which is an adult Aboriginal literacy foundation. And that's built on the basis that if you can teach adults to read and to have appropriate levels of literacy and numeracy, they can also help their children. And the second one was started by a former German international player whom I had the pleasure of meeting last year, Thomas Hitzelsberger, who played for Stuttgart and Aston Villa, amongst others, and the German national team. He's co-started a charity called Future for Nepal. On the basis, he went to Nepal for a documentary that he filmed called Qatar Why, which was showed prior to the World Cup in Qatar. And he met with some Nepalese families whose lives had been devastated by the fact that their husband and father had died in helping to build World Cup infrastructure. So he started this charity. 25% of all of our ticket and book sale proceeds will go to these charities, an equal share of them, so 12.5% each. And as part of that, Thomas Hitzelsberger is also, who is a diversity ambassador for the German FA, he's also coming out to Australia and coming to the Football Writers Festival, which is pretty exciting.
It will be, and I trust all the media outlets get on board, because when you have people of that calibre and that quality who've seen so much and have played so well for so long, it's an added bonus. I'm just wondering, how do they get, if people want to be involved, if people want to get connected, how do they get through to you? How do they get about it?
Well, I have a website, which is footballwritersfestival.org.au. As I said, we're announcing our ticket packages within the next week or two. Just putting the final sort of pieces together in terms of the international guests who are coming. And, if they just do a search for us on social media or on the website, they'll come across us. I should mention that another very exciting part of this year's Football Writers Festival is what we announced last year, which was an emerging women writers program, in which we've invited women from around the world to submit a long form essay, some of which we will publish, and then we'll invite less than a handful of the people who have submitted an article to come to the Writers' Festival and be part of it and talk about what they wrote about. It's been fantastic, the response we've had. I mean, it from little things, big things grow. And so I didn't expect to be inundated, and I haven't been. But we do have a good number of entries, including, which is fantastic, from the African continent. And so I'm really delighted that we've got people, we've been able to get out to people from all around the world about that particular program and that initiative.
You may not know, but Pokuah is Ghanaian, came as I think she's five-year-old, and went back when she was about 12, 15. And of course, did I mention she's football mad? She's fabulous.
I think we know that she's a little football mad, and that's a good thing.
And can I just say, she's got all the colours on. That top, by the way, Pokuah, that everyone's, just lean up so people can see it.
This is the thing, right? You're going to say it's a football kit, but it's not a football kit. It's from a brand that like a friend of mine has, but I do like to think it's it's my non-football football kit.
So it's your non-football football kit.
Yeah, my non-football football kit.
Bonita, you may not see it with the clarity that I can see it, but it looks really smart. Now, if the only thing that could improve this, right, was if it had a number on the back.
Yeah.
Can you lean forward?
So, I should, next time I'll get, there's no number on the back. Maybe I'll get like 5 Frimpong in the back. Just to make people see.
But what I'm saying is a very proud Ghanaian. And for a little while, for a millisecond, Bonita, you would love this, I thought she was related to Jeremy Frimpong, who's part of the Dutch national team. And she... Enormous credit to Pokuah. She didn't dally. She didn't, have me sort of hanging on the edge there. She jumped straight up and said, "No, we're not related."
Unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed. It'd be very cool to say that I'm related to
you would have been
a footballer,
buoyant.
But unfortunately, I did when I was younger. There used to be Emmanuel Frimpong used to play for Arsenal, and I'm a big Arsenal fan.
Oh,
so
of course.
I did. Maybe I've told people I was related to him once or twice. That may not be true, but
would have been a quiet Saturday night, and you just wanted to bump the heat up in the room.
Like, hey guys, I'm related to
the type of thing that. It's the type of thing most people probably wouldn't check up on.
They wouldn't. Exactly. So maybe
Bonita, the football writers that you have working would certainly do their homework, and they would spot it. Don't you worry.
They would, unfortunately.
By the way, remember that wonderful initiative that you were the chair of, Women in Football. I can say with confidence, Pokuah is the one that whole initiative would have been directed at, because smart young woman who loves the game and wants to be as good as she can possibly be. And she's not taking any shortcuts, and she's doing some work above and beyond. And there's one reason for that, to get better. So you'd be buoyant. You'd be very excited about Pokuah. And we're thrilled to bits to have her on FNR. It means the world to us. We've been very lucky to have some terrific young women join us from very early days, Louise Taffer, of course, and to see others. I'm encouraging Pokuah to reach out and bring some more on board.
We should.
Especially this year.
New crop of FNR.
Yeah, new crop.
New FNR.
And make them hungry to be better. That's what Bonita's always been saying.
We'll put the call out like a bat signal and we'll find...
Why not? Why not?
And can I say, in terms of the Football Writers Festival, as well as the Emerging Women Writers program, which I mentioned...
I was going to say, do you have any women?
We've got a couple of people coming who, very inspiring. They've been in the football media or football writing for decades, and they could almost provide a masterclass on how to go about it and how to be resilient and how to keep going and knocking at doors, because you do have to. Absolutely.
There's no two ways about that. I can remember as a young ethnic boy, and I can imagine some of the challenges for a young woman in this day and age. Again, we're seeing enormous changes, and I was doing an interview the other day, and I said to some people, if you think Australia hasn't changed much, you have no idea. The Australia that I was born in no longer exists, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. And thankfully, in some great areas, we are improving. There is one or two other areas that we need to do a bit of homework. And we still suffer, Bonita, and I think you can vouch for this, we still suffer from a terrible cultural cringe in this country, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So how do we break that down? How do we bring writers from around the world to showcase this particular anomaly and make it better?
Look, I think always. One of the things that I would say, and we certainly say in women in football, you can't be what you can't see.
Yes.
And so
used a lot. Yeah.
I think, it's used a lot in a lot of things. I think being able to meet and talk to and have a chat with people who have been there and done that, and find out that as much as it may look easy when they're, say, the deputy editor of a major newspaper, deputy sports editor of a major newspaper or something like that, it may look easy. It hasn't been. And, particularly, the environment for it, it's the same as women players who have come up through the years from, when international women's football started. It's the same on the admin side and on the media side. I was recently asked about this myself. I mean, there's lots of things that people of a certain age, women of a certain age, have had to go through, which fortunately it's made easier now for some of the younger women. There are different pressures and there are different issues to deal with, but some of the entry issues are much easier and much more acceptable for a woman to want to be involved in football.
You mentioned issues. There's one issue. Will Football Australia ever address it? And it's to do with the original Matildas, Trixie Tag and others.
Yeah,
that's an open wound now, isn't it?
That's a question for Football Australia, but I tell you what, Fair Play Publishing has a book coming out about the first Matilda, what is called the first Matildas, and about the 1975 Ladies Asian Cup Tour. Yep. Because let's not forget they came third in that tournament. The Asian Football Confederation counts it as an official tournament. And when that book's out, I'd really urge you to speak. I mean, the author, Greg Downs, has spoken with most of the women who are on that tour.
Can we get Greg on FNR?
You can when the book's out.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Please keep us posted.
I think it is one of those issues, and I've noticed Gary Cole talk about this in relation to the Socceroos, and Andrew Howe addressed it in the updated edition of the Encyclopedia of Socceroos last year as well. There shouldn't be this differentiation between B games and A games anymore. If you're good enough to have played for your country, you're good enough to have played for your country, and let's not forget. The environment within which we played either as Socceroos or Matildas back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, older areas for the men, were very different from what they are now. We didn't have the opportunity always to play other nations within national teams. So, I don't think we should differentiate between those players in terms of their ability and their skills and the fact that they represented the very best of Australia.
Here. I want consistency. If we're going to create a narrative about Australia's centennial, match, New Zealand and Australia, remember that, and all the players that were acknowledged, then if you're going to go back 100 years, go back to 75, and it was a tour that the girls represented Australia. And you can't walk past that.
And they were deemed to be representing Australia by none other than Sir Arthur George. I mean, that would be like
who was the head of what today would be Football Australia. Sir Arthur George was one tough cookie.
Was the equivalent of Chris Niku.
Correct.
So if Chris Niku says something today, we'd all take it as gospel.
Well, it better be said. We need to address it ASAP, and I'm going to put it in the hands of Pokuah to see it through, because us old fellas, may not get the result we want now, but you may, Pokuah, you may. By the way, I can't go. We can't finish this interview without running this Cup of Nations announcement. Through you. You've seen enough. You understand what this means. We've got Spain coming. We've got Czechia coming, which is the Czech Republic, and we've also got Jamaica, which is a team that I like the look of, because we want our Matildas tested. And Pokuah says to me that they're smart, they're ferocious, and they're going to take us on. Do you like the idea of this announcement and the fact that the sponsors have come to the party? We're going to have 3 double headers: Newcastle, Sydney, and Gosford.
Absolutely, and it's what you'd expect prior to hosting a World Cup on home soil. You would think almost everyone wants to come here. I noticed, for instance, the US, who has its group games in New Zealand, is playing a similar sort of tournament in New Zealand. And that's one of the great benefits of having a World Cup on home soil. You get these countries here, they want to come here and they want to play us, and that gives us great match practice as well as them, but obviously we should have the greater advantage than any of them, and they're 3 good teams.
The Lionesses are going to have enormous support down under. How many games are they playing in Australia?
I think they're playing all 3 of their group games in Australia.
I think all their group games.
Yeah, and I mean the other team that I think will have good support will be Ireland,
of course,
which is our first game. It should be a fantastic tournament and, well supported. And I know I have friends who are travelling from Denmark and who just can't get tickets. They're desperate for tickets. So it's sort of good to hear.
There was a book written by a guy called Johnny Warren. Heard of him?
Yes.
And his famous book. And the title is a mouthful. But you mentioned the Irish. And of course, they were the ones most responsible for giving us the word Sheila, adding it to our lexicon. And Johnny Warren ran with it.
Yeah, Australia has a very strong Irish background from very early on. Yeah.
Look, Bonita, thank you very much for catching up and agreeing to join us and giving us an insight into some of the things that you've got set up and very excited to be doing. We wish you every success. And again, just give us that website again, should people reach out and want to speak to you.
footballwritersfestival.org.au.
Okay, and the dates one more time?
15th to the 17th of July, 3 days.
So, and those dates are coming at a rate of knots.
Can I say it's 6 months and 3 days away?
You know who just jumped up? Pokuah. She just got excited.
The days of...
Yep.
Well, I can't believe we're in the 12th day of the year already. It's gone way too quick.
Wouldn't you want to see... young women of the calibre of Pokuah joining some of the male broadcasters to call the Women's World Cup? Wouldn't that be exciting?
Absolutely. I mean, it's already happening vice versa as well. I mean, you're getting a lot of women who are part of the broadcast team for men's football. So, yeah, it should happen both ways.
Fantastic.
Best person for the job.
Correct. Bonita Mersiades has been our special guest on FNR's State of Our Football Nation. Thank you for all of that. And when you get a little bit further into the year and we get awfully close to some of those big events, we're going to get back to you, Bonita.
Sounds good. Thank you, George.
All the very, very best. Thanks again.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay. See you later.
There you go, Pokuah. No more excuses. You want to get involved? Put your hand up. get into it. I noticed you were very quiet then, did I? Did I just speak over the top of you?
No, you didn't, George. I was just listening to everything in that, really fascinating stuff from Bonita. So,
Bonita's been there from the very beginning. People say she was a whistleblower at a critical time in the game's history, but she's been much more than that. She was the manager of the Socceroos for quite some time, through some big competitions, was there when they were bidding for the World Cup. So she understands not only the dynamics, the politics, the propaganda, and everything else that went with it. And, these days, a publisher in her own right, doing some tremendous work to not only tell the best stories, but to showcase some of the best stories and give people a chance to, especially the younger members of the community, a chance to find out the rich history that is this game of ours that we call football and some people call soccer.
Some people.
Yeah, some people. Now, this week, what game are you doing? It'll be a Saturday night. It's Newcastle.
Saturday at 3 o'clock. It'll be Canberra playing Newcastle at Mackellar Park. Should be a really exciting game. Newcastle just had a big win over Adelaide on the last weekend, and Canberra in some good form. They've just been struggling. They haven't been scoring as many goals as they probably should, but both some really fascinating teams, and should be a really good contest.
Can I just move you forward to the men's competition, the A-League men's? You mentioned Adelaide.
Yeah.
They went through a horror moment and got whipped 4-0. 4-0. Mind you, they got a player sent off, and someone who's played, an awful lot of games. He went in. I thought he just mistimed it. There was no malice intended, but Isaias got nailed, got a red card, and then the Central Coast Mariners went through them like a dose of salts. What do you make of that? Because Adelaide is on paper, and I know they don't play on paper, but on paper and on its day is one of the fiercest and combative teams in the competition. You don't like getting whipped 4-0 at any time.
No, you certainly don't. But the Mariners are a fun team, though. Like they're never out of.
Nick Montgomery's enjoying it.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys have had him on Sufin.
I think we're going to have to have him again.
And he's really, really fascinating. I think the players believe in him, and they never really out of any game. Like they have lapses of moments, but they also have really high energy and have moments of real skill. They just can't put it together for 90 minutes, and they put it together for 90 minutes against Adelaide. But no, they're a really fun team, and they can beat anyone, really. I'm
just wondering if they went at the extra yard that particular day, because it was the farewell for young Garang Kuol. What's the latest? We're hearing now he might end up in Scotland on loan from Newcastle. Is that what you were hearing?
Well, that's what Lockie Flanagan certainly wants to hear, and that's what he's certainly hearing at the moment. But
isn't it amazing? I was just going to say to you, Lockie who?
Yeah, no, Lockie's...
He's been away 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks now, and we've forgotten him.
No, Lockie, I think Lockie's got Google alerts on for Garang Kuol and the Hearts. Just, I think he's waiting. He's just sitting by his phone, and I think we might hear, there might be we see the Batman logo up in the sky in the comments. I think you'll see, Lockie will get one of the flying, the skywriting. We'll get skywriting.
Pokuah Frimpong is my co-host. I didn't realise how much bat energy she...
I love Batman. Batman's great. It's great. Best superhero.
Hey,
Justice League.
I'm a huge Batman fan, don't worry. I didn't realise how deep your affection is for him.
He's great.
Well, you surprised me. You go, on one level you went Arsenal. I went, really? And then she goes, Batman. I go, yes.
Yeah, Batman's awesome. Lockie, I think if he goes, Lockie's, because I don't watch that much of the Scottish
just
Premier.
Read it for me. What's your view? Wouldn't Portugal be a better fit for him
Lockie,
if he could get the playing time?
I think so, but also Hearts have already got Socceroos.
Yes, that's true.
In there. So it's
Rolsey's there. They're teammates from the Central Coast Mariners.
I think we see a lot of times where players from different when they've got to go to a different country, they've got to learn a different language.
Sure.
It takes them a really long time to settle in.
And they feel like an outsider.
And because there's pressure on them, if all these other things aren't clicking for them, everybody goes, oh, they haven't done well. But to go to Hearts where they speak the same language, you've got people you already know there, it's easier to settle in, and it's also a much more comfortable environment, so it allows him to be more free. And Hearts have already got a system, and he doesn't have the pressure of having to be some superstar.
That's
so
fair.
It makes it easier for him to settle in, and I think it'd be easier for him to succeed there, as opposed to isolated in Portugal.
So you agree with Lockie, but you also concur with me that he needs playing time.
Yeah, I do.
Right?
Yeah.
So are we saying the jump between the A-League and the Scottish Premier League is not that great, but it's great enough that he should be playing?
I think there is a big gap between the Scottish Prem and the A-League.
Is that right?
I think so.
So you're spending a lot of time with Lockie then?
No, I think I'm buying into. Maybe I'm buying into Lockie's rhetoric, but no. But of the games of the Scottish Prem that I have seen, there has been high quality games, and I think just so long as he's getting, I think
a lot of Australians do.
Yeah, no, but
isn't it amazing?
I don't think it's about him like playing a full 90 per se and like being in the starting like 11. But it's more so about consistent minutes, where it's 20 minutes in this game, the next 20 minutes, and just
playing a particular role,
playing a really specific role, and being excelling at that. That's all I want.
And what we don't know is what instructions will Newcastle give. To that setup in Scotland.
But I think that going to a club like Hearts, whenever it's confirmed, if that's where it ends up being, there's not pressure on him to succeed, because Hearts, they've already got established players, and they have a system. He's just a player who's there to develop, and the fact that he's technically at Newcastle, it means that if he does well, he knows exactly where he's going to go.
They had him on the website, the Newcastle website. He looked the goods. They got right behind him. They're all very excited. They're all talking Garen Qual.
Yep, and Newcastle are a side that are building a culture with Eddie Howe, and building a really...
He seems to be doing a tremendous job.
No, he's doing a fantastic job. I remember when Arsene Wenger was in his last years and Arsenal fans were deciding if we should get Eddie Howe. And now he's had the time and he's succeeding.
I wonder if he copped a little bit of backlash from his time at Bournemouth when they started to not lose their way, but he had a couple of injuries and this, that and the other, and didn't quite get those tremendous... And this is not a criticism.
No.
I'm just giving you my perspective. I think he's an absolutely quality coach, and the horses that he had never quite gave him the opportunity to showcase his talent. Whereas he's gone to Newcastle, he's thought, listen, they have the money now, but they also don't want a revolution. They want an evolution. They want to do this slowly, a bit like City did when they came into Melbourne Heart. A lot of the Heart fans imagined that the money would be spent and they would win the championship that next year or that year. Well, that was never going to happen. And in fact, I remember talking to Ferran Soriano when he was here, who's the managing director of the City Football Group, and he said, no, give us 10 years and we'll not only be champions of Australia, but we'll be champions of Asia. And that's still another thing that they've got to do.
Yeah, I think I really like what Newcastle are doing, because I think it is a recipe for long-term success. You can buy a lot of players in a really short period of time and you can win, but it does not ensure that your club will be great for 10 years, 15, 20 years. That takes it really hard. And if you have to work on your culture and you have to get the right players, they have to be young players, and you have to develop and set a tone and a standard. And I think Newcastle have given Eddie Howe the freedom to build, and he's absolutely exceeding expectations by the fact that they're in third place in the Premier League right now and going to Arsenal and getting a draw against the league leaders.
Speaking of Arsenal, were you unhappy about Mr. Mikel Arteta and some of his diatribe and actions on the sideline?
Because I think we should have got a penalty. I think
but you don't speak about scandalous.
I think scandalous is a very strong word.
Yeah.
But I do.
You don't run it out unless you know for sure.
But I do think out of the two of the things that he was upset about, I think one of them most certainly was a penalty. And
can I run this as a counter? Right. I'm not going to agree or disagree with you. I think I saw the action there, and I didn't believe one of the outcomes. But I've seen so many things happen in the EPL over the last number of years where you're not certain
Yes.
It goes to the VAR and you go, it's got to be a penalty.
Yeah.
And nothing.
No, but that's
and this, that, and the other, right? I'm just thinking that the only advice I would have for Mikel, who has done an extraordinary job in the last year alone and has got unfinished business, especially after the way they got mercilessly cut down last year when they failed to get into the top 4, when they had it there to do it. He has grown immeasurably, as has his squad, but I think he's starting to feel the pressure, and some of the behaviour rubs off on players. If they see you agitated, don't they become agitated too?
I think there's a real belief in this, like the Arsenal team, though.
So you think there's no problem with Arteta's actions and behaviour?
Because I think for a long time...
Let's see.
Absolutely. And for a long time, it's like there's been so much noise that has affected the Arsenal team from everybody else who was not an Arsenal fan. And I think that Mikel Arteta has set a culture now in which that the voices that are important are the internal club and the fans of the act of the club, not the pundits that wanted to speak about Arsenal and all the different...
No argument there. The last coach that started behaving like this, his name was Kevin Keegan, and he was coaching Newcastle, and they looked like they were going to be the tear-away winners of the EPL. Yeah. And they disintegrated and self-harm everywhere, and Manchester United beat them.
I will say this. I think if Arsenal didn't win the league, I would not be upset. Arsenal winning the league is not the determinant of if we've had a successful season or not for me.
No.
When we started this season, I said, I just want top 4.
Qualify
for the top 4.
Europe.
And it looks like we're going to do that. And we're playing really good football.
Yeah, playing great football.
So I'm all,
You're almost wearing the right colours too.
Almost.
On that note, it's time for me to say to Pokuah, a very good day. Look forward to catching you up next week. And next week, you'll have some results for me. And I want, if you can, to give me your rundown or assessment of what will be the final 4 for the A-League Women's. No pressure.
Okay. I'll think about that.
You know your sport, you know your footy, and you know which teams are out there that are combative enough to grow and make a real play for the last 4 places. That's all I want from you. Okay. You don't have to give me the winner, but the final 4 would be nice.
So I'll see how that goes this weekend.
And good luck on Saturday with Newcastle and Adelaide.
Canberra.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. From the studios, the Melbourne studios in Docklands for FNR Football Nation Radio, George Danikian along with Pokuah Frimpong saying catch you next week.